This is Max Pat's podcast, and I'm going to talk about the Patriots' first round pick in the 2014 NFL Draft. And the Patriots came into the draft with the 29th pick. They didn't trade up or down. They selected right at 28. Selected Florida defensive lineman Dominique Easley. And it was a very surprising pick for me for a couple of reasons. One, the main reason is because of the style of defensive tackle that he is, or at least that he seems to me. He seems to me like a gap shooting defensive tackle that is more of a pass rushing defensive tackle, and that's not something the Patriots are usually interested in. They like to have the big, huge, two-gapping defensive tackles that go one-on-one with an offensive lineman and are responsible for multiple gaps in the run game. And they just try to eat up blockers, not really interested in getting sacks. But Easley is a sack man. And so it's strange to see them take that style, the gap shooting pass rush style defensive tackle, and it's also surprising seeing them take one that small, regardless of style. He's 6'2", 288, so a defensive tackle under 300 pounds, 12 pounds under 300 too. He's a small guy, but a couple things interesting, especially when you talk about his size, is one is when they announced his name, they called him a defensive end, and the commissioner reads it right off the draft card, and it's the team that writes the draft card. It's not, Mike Mayock or the player himself or anybody. It's the actual team fills out the card, and they called him defensive end from Florida, Dominique Easley. So, that might give you some an example of how they're using him, and also, Bill Belichick had his press conference right after the draft, after the first round, and they asked him directly about taking an undersized defensive tackle, and Bill commented on that he plays all over the line. He's not necessarily just a defensive tackle. He said he's undersized. It depends on where he lines up because he wouldn't be undersized for a defensive end. So maybe that's how they plan on using him. That would explain a lot. And there's a couple. Listening to the radio today, they've been playing over and over and over again Ray Lewis's comments on the draft pick, and Ray Lewis talked about Easley as a high effort player. He said that he used effort alone to beat Miami last year. Ray Lewis apparently watched the game live between Miami and Florida, and Dominique Easley had a great game with effort alone. And Ray Lewis talked about how he gets it, how Dominique Easley gets it, that how important effort is, and one of those just high effort guys. Ray Lewis seemed to really, really like the pick, and every time they play that effort thing on the radio, that the Ray Lewis quotes get people pumped up about the draft pick. But every time I hear that, it makes me cringe with fear, because when you combine a player with that much effort and they're undersized like that, that's going to be an injury-prone player. That is Bob Sanders and Danny Amendola in a nutshell. They both play. Bob Sanders, he'd run like 100 miles an hour and just throw himself at people. Like, he just all over the field, flying around, just throwing himself to make tackles. Like, just like as if his body is not even his. just like lunging and just playing 120%. And when you're so small and you play that hard, you get hurt. And you can't tell a guy like that to not play hard. That's who they are. And I look at Danny Amendola very similarly. Small guy, 5'11", but plays really hard. Like, refuses to get tackled. Diving for balls in the air. I mean, plays 100 miles an hour with that little body. And that's a major concern for me. Most people talk about the injuries that Easley's already had as a concern, because he has two torn ACLs already. And so he's an injury concern with past injuries. How's he going to heal? 2 ACLs. Will his leg ever be the same with he tore it twice? But I'm more concerned with the future injuries than the past. A guy like that small, that apparently plays with that much effort, to me that just equals that's an injury-prone player. But, I'll hope for the best. I mean, maybe if they use him on the end, he won't be that undersized. If they use him as a DT and he uses that much effort, then, I'll be kind of concerned about him getting hurt. But on the end, he wouldn't be that small. And, he seems like a fiery player. I mean, there's reason to be excited. Defensive tackle, definitely a need, because the two starting defensive tackles the Patriots have are both old, Kelly and Wilfork, and so it's nice to have a rookie in there and a first-round pick, future of that position. And it's also, when it comes down to the style thing, I mean, it just points the finger at what this league has become, a passing league. And looks like Bill is catching on to that with this type of selection. I mean, a pass-rushing defensive tackle is something I've never really seen here in New England. Not in Bill's time. So, I mean, he's getting with the times, I guess. It's a passing league. I mean, Easley might be susceptible against the run, but I mean, that's what linebackers are for. So, we got Mayo. And you're not going to, in this day and age, you don't really see a team lose a game because of the running, because they gave up too much running. Unless you give up a lot of running. So, I mean, I overall, I'm very concerned with the pick. From an injury standpoint, but I'm excited to see getting an actual pass rush from up the middle, potentially, or if they're using him as an end, then just throw him in the rotation with Jones and Ninkovich. So it's exciting. I'm up and down on it. But I know that one thing is Bill Belichick doesn't really believe in injury-prone players. He just, he brings in those guys, Amendola, and there's other ones, Gronk, Hernandez. I mean, he doesn't believe that any player is more injury prone than another. He doesn't factor that into his decisions at all, which I kind of disagree with. I think that there really is such thing as being injury prone, and Bill doesn't. He doesn't factor that in. If someone has a lot of injuries in their past, as long as they're healthy now, there's no reason to think they're going to get injured in the future. It's just bad luck. That's how he looks at it. But I actually believe that there are players that are more prone to injury than others. And a lot of times it's the player's effort and size and their position. Like I was talking about earlier with the way Bob Sanders played at that size. That's why he got injured every single year of his career. And Amendola is very similar. Welker is small, but he didn't play nowhere near as hard. Not trying to take a knock at Welker. He plays good. He's a good player. But he didn't play nowhere near as hard as Amendola does. Welker would go down. He's shifty, but he's not going to try to crash through somebody. He's not going to try to power out of a tackle like Amendola. And he's not diving for too many balls. Welker's a good player, but he doesn't play nowhere near as hard as Amendola did. Little players could be successful, but when they have as high an effort and they play that hard, sometimes it could lead to them being injury prone. And I do believe that some players are injury prone. I've seen it too many times, and it makes sense to me. A guy with that type of effort and those type of size, they're gonna get hurt. And I'm hoping that that's not what Dominique Easley is. He's already gotten 2 torn ACLs. He's only 288, and he plays defensive tackle. And then you got Ray Lewis saying he's one of the hardest effort guys he's ever seen. The first time I heard the Ray Lewis thing, it got me pumped. Like, the coach in me, just effort. Oh yeah, you love it that the guys give all he's got, just anything to win. Like, he's an effort guy. It's like Ray Lewis said, that's what it takes just to have 10 years in this league. That's what separates the people with talent that make it and the people with talent that don't. It's the effort. It really gets Ray Lewis going seeing a player like that, and I'm sure it gets Bill going too as a coach. But when you put that effort in with a guy that small, and he's already got 2 torn ACLs. I'm just wondering. I could see this guy being the defensive tackle version of Bob Sanders. Like, when he plays, he's great, but he just gets hurt every single year. But we'll see. But anyways, thanks for listening.